And they look and they go, well, that's unfair. And I said, blame your parents.
Welcome back to the CBC Sports Swimming Show. I'm your host, Brittany MacLean Campbell, and I am really excited about our guest today. He's an Olympian. He's been the voice of Canadian swimming for over 40 years here at CBC Sports, and casually, he also is the head coach of the U of T varsity program. What has that been since 1978, I believe? Please welcome in person with me, Byron MacDonald, the legend himself. Thank you for being here, Byron.
I'm always happy to talk swimming, Britt, and obviously with you, I really enjoy it. So this is great.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to start with broadcaster Byron. That's a bit of a tongue twister, broadcaster Byron. I don't think I've ever asked you, but what was your first initiation into the world of broadcasting, and how did you get involved?
I got involved because it seemed like it was an interesting field, which obviously we both know now it is. But I was being interviewed, and I asked the guy that was interviewing me, because at the time I was winning the nationals and they were interviewing people, can I go out to the truck and see how it works? And I went in there and it was captivating. It was so cool. And I actually told the producer that was, running everything, the director, and I said, I think you should maybe put the camera a little lower, try this and everything. He said, oh, maybe we got somebody here. And then when it just, sometimes life is perfect, things time out very quickly. And right when I was done swimming, the guy that was doing the color commentator quit and moved to Europe. So they needed somebody. And back in the 70s, I know that's a long time ago, most of the girls that swam were girls. And what I mean by that, they were teenagers. They were not swimmers today, like today when they're in their 20s or late 20s, even a few in their 30s. And even the guys went one quadrennial and done. So everybody was done at age 22 or 3. So I went 2 quadrennials. So I was 25, 26, a little more experienced and had some ideas. And they let me try it and I was fine. So there you go. And then the first games I did was 78 Commonwealth Games in Edmonton. It was a little scary, but it was fun.
I was going to say, with that first call, do you have vivid memories of it, or?
Well, the part I have vivid memories about was that we were into one night, and we're getting ready to finish off the race, and I think it's 9:30, and the producer forgot to kill my mic or my commentator's ear, and he was asking all the people there, the cameramen, if they could take an extra half hour for their break. But all he said, because they were on a union break, but all I heard was, can we go another half hour? And my eyeballs went about this big, and I thought, we got to talk for a half an hour before this last race? What the hell are we going to talk about? And then it finally dawned on me that it was about everybody else. It wasn't about the 2 commentators. So anyway, that was the part that scared me the most there. But it was just, it's an exciting medium. It's fun, and best seat in the house. But more importantly, I get to sell our sport, and I think that's what I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've read before Paris this year, your favorite race memory on the mic was Alex Bauman's win in 400 AM gold in 1984. Was there anything in Paris that topped that?
It came close, but the catch was that Canada had not won a gold medal in 72 years, I believe it was. So it was really extra special that Alex was able to win that. And yes, it was, I would argue that Summer's win in the 200 IM was pretty darn close to that. It was her 3rd gold medal already, but it was, it was just that special for me to call my first gold medal. I've called a few since, like Mark Tewksbury's was very exciting and others, but, it was the very first one. I think that's why probably it's so.
Beautiful. Oh, look at that. Looking over the stands to his mother, over in the stands. She's standing up over there.
And you mentioned Summer's 200 AM, which to me also was my highlight for Summer in Paris. Can you help provide context as to why that race was that much more impressive than some of her others?
Because Summer was seated 5 seconds faster than anybody in the 400 AM, so that was going to be earth-shaking. If she somehow lost that, it'd be a catastrophe. And even the 200 fly, it just feels like she hasn't even touched what she can do in that. So you kind of felt she could win that one pretty easily as well. Whereas the 200 AM, she's going against 2 women that were world champion medals, Olympic medals, not Olympic medals, but world championship medals. And they dominated sort of over the last couple of years. And then there was the wild card even, the Australian, who actually had a time that would have won, I believe it was the gold medal in Tokyo, but chose not to swim it because she was a little bit newer to the whole doubling up with more events. But this time she said, I'm going to swim it and I'm going to challenge for the gold medal. So arguably, most people that know swimming really well kind of knew that that was probably the toughest event, maybe the toughest event in the Olympic Games to win a gold medal. And Summer didn't panic because she was actually behind going into the last turn. And she passed one lady and held off the other woman from the United States And that was, that's the way she finishes. She finishes like a house on fire. So it was great. It was very exciting. And, to come from behind as opposed to just dominating like she did in the other races, that's why it was so exciting.
Yeah, I've tried to put into context that race so many times, and I'm like, that one, like you said, the 400 AM was hers for the taking.
Yeah.
The 200 fly had a few challengers, but likely hers for the taking. That 200 AM took every ounce of strategy, of discipline, of staying through the meet as well, because you're now on day, 7?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's also learning how to not be exhausted.
Yeah.
And let's face it, she won her first gold medal, all right, a few days earlier. That's a hell of a high, okay, for any athlete. I don't care who you are. And she had to come back down off of that, win another one. So now all of a sudden you got 2 gold medals in your pocket. If you somehow didn't win this gold medal, it's not the end of the world.
No.
You're still pretty good, but she still found that extra adrenaline and excitement that she needed, and confidence in herself and confidence with her coach working with her. And, smart, because they walked through this kind of stuff the year before in Worlds and doubled up on events to try to make sure that she was used to figuring it out. And she even said it's hard getting enough rest because you're so excited that you can't fall asleep right away, but you've got to, because the next day you got to get up and do it again.
Yeah, you've got to get up and race. And some days it works well and other days not so well. My last race of my whole career, I got probably an hour of sleep before that one, and it did not end very well. So speaking of, I have to be slightly selfish in this. I want to ask you, because you have had the chance to call quite a few of my races over the years. I think with distance swimming, the one thing on the commentator side is that you have a lot more time to chat. So you often remember them. I have to ask you, do you have a favorite memory of ever calling one of my races?
Yeah, I would say both of them in the Pan Pacs in Australia. The 800 and the 1500. Because I also because again, I'm a little bit closer to some of the swimmers, I kind of know that you were hurting, all right? Your shoulders were shot, and you were you were gritting it out. You were doing a hell of a job there. And my recollection is you went out pretty darn fast, okay, all right? And then, yes, Katie Ledecky beat you, all right? But I mean,
lap me.
All right, but I mean, she set a world record in that race. But it was still exciting for Canada to be able to get a medal out of both those races, And so to me, those ones, obviously the relay medal at the Olympics was special simply because you were so sick you couldn't even swim the prelims, which was pretty scary for a Canadian team, to be honest, right? Like all of a sudden we're sitting here going, you mean Britt may not be able to swim in the final? We're kind of toast if that happens here, right? So, the coaches made a great decision, pulled you off the prelims, rested you, and luckily, I think it was Kennedy. Kennedy Goss stepped in, all right, and was able to help qualify the team. And then you were able to swim in the finals, and you reached down for every little bit you had. So, and that was exciting. But I like the individual swims. I thought those were pretty cool.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, the 1500 is my favorite claim to fame. That meet, it's still the Canadian record that 1500 free. Yeah. It was outside in like that choppy water.
Oh, it was raining half the day. It was a lousy games. Right?
Katie Ledecky broke the world record in that race and not lapped me by the 100, but lapped me by the 50. So beat me by at least the 50, and I was still on the podium.
I know.
So that just shows you how dominant she was.
Yes. And
it's always
still is in that race.
It's always a funny little fact for me. I'm like, yeah, my Canadian record time actually was done when somebody lapped me in the race. Yeah. So remember that. Anyways, we'll hopefully see some.
Did you hear the crowd? All right, I had a friend that was one of my athletes was in the water when Alex Bauman broke the world record in the 400 Emmett trials, and he said he was about 10 meters behind, and I think he finished 3rd or 4th.
Yeah.
But he was 10 meters behind, and he heard a huge roar, and he says, "Oh, cool, he got the record."
I think every time she was swimming at that point, it was like she's like going best time. Like if she's going best time, she's breaking her world record. Yeah. I do remember outside it was harder to hear because like you're not in a enclosed.
Yep.
So it was a little bit of like I heard a bunch of noise, but it could have been the wind or the rain, to be honest. Anyways, it was a really fun meet for Canada, and it was my first kind of summer of senior international podium. So those are some special.
And I mean, you hammered yourself so badly that you actually had to take the next summer off. You couldn't even compete in a home games at the Pan Ams, which was unfortunate for you.
Yeah.
But you had to rest to be physically healthy for the next year. So it paid off.
It did. Rio was worth it. I want to put you on the spot quickly.
Sure.
I would love to have you help us commentate a race from back in 1972.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of special meaning for you.
Yep.
And I got to watch this earlier, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So I wondered if you can talk us through what we're seeing on the screen as our producer presses play.
Okay, well, that's Mark Spitz, and Mark Spitz was probably more talent. That's Jerry Heinrich, all right? And I tied him for the fastest high school kid in the country at one point when we were both in grade 12. And he was favored to win the silver medal. And that's Bruce Robertson, who a year before the Olympics couldn't even make the national team. He dropped 5 seconds almost in 1 year and he'll eventually win the silver medal here. But he had a hell of a semifinals and qualified second. So.
Look at these bathing suits. Can we talk about the
Well,
attire?
They were not exactly state of the art. Right?
Look at the hair too. No aerodynamic.
Uncool to wear bathing caps. All right. So I was in lane 1. The other American 2. Roland Mathis was in lane 3. On this start, you're going to watch Roland Mathis in lane 3 and myself. We both heard something, so we both started to stand up. We got left on the blocks.
You didn't even go down for take your marks.
Yeah.
I was interested in what
Yeah,
your
that's true.
insight was.
Only Mark Spitz did a grab start. Nobody else understood what it was at that time. And I felt to go down and swing your arms all the way around, which is what we did.
Okay,
right, in those
let's
days.
watch it. So Byron's at the top.
Okay. And I felt that was a waste of time, so I actually hardly bent over.
No goggles either.
No goggles, no bathing caps.
Did you train in either of them or
Nope,
no?
nope,
Okay.
Nope, your eyeballs fell out after the workout. So much chlorine.
Oh, last on the blocks.
That's
He's
on
got
the
some
blocks.
mental
Look
game.
At that, yes. All right, so there was prelims and semis the day before. Now this is the final. As I said, Spitz is in the middle, so he'll do the grab start. See how everybody else does? Now we swing our arms around. But you notice that me and the guy in lane 3, we got left on the blocks. It didn't make a difference for myself, all right, but it made a difference for the East German in lane 3. He would have won the silver medal easily. But he got left way behind I did. So Mark Spitz went out. Mark Spitz was a second faster than anybody else in the field. There was no question he was going to win the gold medal. The question really was who was going to finish second or third. And to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure I could move up and improve enough to be able to win a medal. So my goal was to finish top 6, because believe it or not, they only gave you diplomas if you finished top 6, even though you're in the top 8 final. So I want to make damn sure I was top 6, so I finished 6th and got a diploma. So, as I said, Mark Spitz was probably much more talented than Michael Phelps. He may have been even a better swimmer than Michael Phelps. But back then, if you wanted to make money, you had to quit. You couldn't compete in the Olympics anymore. You had to start selling whatever. And so he broke a world record here. And now there's a big battle towards the end. And the Canadian guy in lane number 6 is going to just boom.
And watch your
in
touch
there.
here.
Yeah, I know. Not a very good touch. I think I was hurting so bad at that point. Right? So I'm over in lane 1, and I'm looking across. That's Spitz and Heinrich, but next to Heinrich was the Canadian, the next lane over. And I looked across, and I looked over at Bruce, and I went, oh, my God. And he's just got his eyeballs are bugging out. He couldn't believe it.
So it was a huge best time for him.
Yes, huge best time. Literally, the year before, he was 59. Look at that.
you came
Bruce
6th.
Robertson, lane 6. I did, and that was the goal. Right? So, they're going to show it again.
So
All right. So, yeah. So, I mean, I'm a little far behind, which is unfortunate.
The commentator
Right?
on the call does give you a little bit of a slight on this final. He said, MacDonald back there in the back.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I was only a few tenths off my best
You
time.
were great.
So, these guys were just that much faster. They were a full second faster than I was, right? So, the East German in lane 3 from the top, see, he should have won the silver easily, but remember how far behind he was on the start?
Yeah.
So, and then the Canadian guy shouldn't have breathed on the last stroke. Bruce, what are you doing?
Okay, let's talk about your touch here. What would you tell your swimmer?
So I was just trying to get my arms around as quick as I could. Whoa, there's the wall. I better hurry up quick. Keep your head down, stupid.
But a world record for Mark Spitz, one of the greatest swimmers ever.
He set 7 world records, won 7 gold medals. I mean, he was incredible, and they had a dual meet internal before the games, and they broke into 4 teams, and the Americans finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in 100 backstroke against that East German boy who won. So the 4th team had Mark, and they said, Mark, why don't you swim the backstroke in this medley relay? He beat the other 3 guys. So he could have challenged for the gold medal in the backstroke. He set American records in the 400 free, the 200. He was an incredible swimmer. But the big thing about that final, the final thing I'll make, Britt, is why we're a lot slower now than they are today. There were only 2 guys over 6 feet in that final. Mark Spitz wasn't even over 6 feet.
Wow.
Whereas Michael Phelps is 6'5". I mean, all the guys now, they're monsters compared to the pipsqueaks that we were back in that day.
Well, and I'm only laughing at your touch because you're a coach now. So, like, you would see that touch and immediately have 25 things to talk about.
Slap. Okay.
But I am so impressed. If put on a racing suit, put on a cap and goggles, you guys would have been going almost as fast as the girls.
Maybe not. Well, and weight training wasn't a big deal then either. So we weren't that
so
strong.
much has evolved.
So I could beat some of these girls today.
Oh, yes, you could. Absolutely, you could beat some of these girls.
And I'll go one-on-one with Maggie.
Yes, you absolutely should. I can't wait. Let's start working on that 100 fly. Okay, so we're going into our next segment, which is hot topics. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, typically in this segment, we like to talk about anything that's like current and ongoing the week of.
Sure.
We just came off an Easter weekend, call it, whether you celebrate or not. It was a stat in our province, and people get the days off work. I wondered, how do you approach coaching on a holiday? Is it typically I hammer out the fact that they might not have school and I go even harder? This one you mentioned that they're in exams right now.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about your coaching mindset when it comes to a holiday.
Well, as you probably remember, Britt, in the old days, it was double time. Do as much as you can. It was hell week over Christmas, just max meters, and people ended up getting hurt. And they also lost out on family time, but everybody's career was much shorter back then. Now everybody's going over a longer period of time. We have people that are going to 3 Olympics or 4 Olympics and stuff like that. So you're going to burn them out if you don't give them a chance to have holidays and such. So right now, yes, during Easter, it was a little bit easier for us to get the pool time whenever we wanted it, since obviously the pool's shut, so we had to open to the public. So we had to get special permission to open it. We wouldn't go any extra harder. We would maybe pick one day to go really hard and then one day to go, sort of recovery or whatever. Like yesterday, now we're in the middle of exams, so you do have to taper it a little bit. You have to understand that the athletes are I have a rough rule of thumb. When you write a final exam, that's like doing a 2-hour flat-out workout. And so if you've done that already and then you're coming in to swim, you're not going to perform.
It's when you've been the academic and the
That's right.
athletic.
I have to take
not
that
every coach has
no,
that
not
same
every coach
mindset.
thinks about that. So I have to think about that, and we're very proud of our athletes and how they go on to do great things. Most of them actually go on to grad school from the University of Toronto. So we've got to be very careful with that. And right now, you also, as a coach, you take a look at it and, okay, it's April. We're getting ready for July and August. So you know what? If we're going a little bit easier today, it's all part of the big package of trying to move forwards.
And same approach for Christmas training, because I used to have I still think I have a bit of PTSD from Christmas training. I would, especially when I was in university. I mean, growing up, it was always like a really heavy block. And I remember there would be like family, friend, Christmas parties and stuff. And I'd be sleeping in the corner because my parents, of course, they wanted to celebrate the holidays. We're all just trying to see every family member you can. And I was like, I have practice tomorrow morning and it's going to be the hardest one I've done all week. And I've done 12 in the last, 8 days. And so is that still the case, or is that kind of tapered? Okay.
No, it's tapered off really, really big. A lot of programs actually will shut down from the 25th to the 31st.
Okay.
Sometimes it's actually very tough to get pool time for some of these programs. We can get pool time, but again, when I first started coaching, we would go down to Florida or somewhere for a training camp, and we would leave on December 20th, the last day of exams. We would miss Christmas.
Oh,
the athletes wouldn't even stay home for Christmas because we'd go down for 2 weeks. And it was after about 5 or 6 years that I went, this is nuts, and I didn't have any kids at the time, so I wasn't doing it for my family. I was doing it for their families. And so now bottom line is, over the Christmas holidays, it is nice. There's 2 reasons you go away, Britt, all right? One is, or the 2 ways you have a training camp at home, but going away is better, and the reason is that you can focus. It's great team building as well. Obviously, they do have a bit of fun. But more importantly, when they're home, oh, grandma's in town from Europe.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got this family fun. And what ends up happening is they miss a lot of training.
Yeah.
And so if you go away, you kind of have them in a
and it's like distraction as well, right? You think about we're in hockey playoffs right now. They're in Toronto, but they're not going to be staying. All those players aren't staying at home last night. They're at hotels and they prepare for their competition.
No, that's a good point.
They're going anywhere.
And to be honest, you need a break in the routine.
Yeah.
All right. For the swimmers in particular, I mean, it's not the most exciting sport in the world. And training in the same pool for 9 straight, 10 straight months or whatever it is, going away somewhere is kind of nice, right? In the sunshine, outdoors, it's
we stare at a black line.
I know. Exactly.
It's not the most exciting. We do.
Yeah.
There was a summer, I don't know if you remember it, but eSwim, where I grew up training, our pool was under construction, and I came to train with you and your kids for. I think it was a whole summer, but I remember it was like we got to Subway to the pool and we went downtown and it was like such a big deal. And I'm like, I did Byron MacDonald's distance workouts.
That's right. No, it was, and that is, what? Then the smart coaches out there will actually take their swimmers and let's face it, a lot of them are colleagues or friends or somehow on some level, and they'll say, let's join our groups together and do a training camp together down south or even in the same city or whatever, just for a change, and I think it really helps the athletes. They need something different once in a while for a new stimulus.
And just like
That's how you
different
grow,
competition. Because we did one training camp. My late coach, Kevin Thorburn, was really close with Murray Drudge, and the two of them did a training camp together. And as well, I'm thinking about, I grew up and my best friends were also my highest competitors that swam at Oakville and stuff. So if all of us were at Ontario training camps, that was head-to-head battles every day. So yes, that is a great point. Okay, my second hot topic, quickly, Team GB selects their roster for 2025 World Championships. They had their nationals this week. Were there any performances that stood out to you?
They've got a young sprint lady. All right, I think she's coming up really fast, which is, to be honest, they're not looking great for the Worlds. I think, Great Britain swimming is very strong, but they may have peaked, it looks like, and there's hardly any new blood going into their system. And the people they have are, one or two of them are phenomenal swimmers, particularly the Scotsman, Duncan Scott. Weird to say he's a Scotsman with Scott, the last name, but he's a very, very elite athlete. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, by the time LA rolls around, he'll be 30. And by the time LA rolls, Adam Peaty, their wonderful breaststroker, will be 33 or 4 or something. So, they're kind of trotting out the same horses. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that. The good news for Canada, we can touch on it later, but, most of them are young. Summer's still a teenager, okay, right? And the 2 guys that won medals, they're early 20s. So mm-hmm. So we're talking, it's not the same thing. Yes, Kylie's a bit, she's the veteran, obviously, right? But there's all those young people. And in Great Britain, other than that young freestyle, and they have a backstroke boy that's doing pretty good too, and he's 21, but mm-hmm. Morgan. But the other guys are all kind of the same old guys, you know, and there are 1 or 2 of them are already in their 30s, and they're relying on them to be able to rise. They'll win a relay medal at the Olympics for sure, but boy, individual medals are going to be tough to come by, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, and the 200 free, you spoke about Duncan Scott. That was a fun one. They tied. So James Guy and Duncan Scott tied the 200 free at their trials, which makes things interesting because they actually have Matt Richards, who was second at the Olympics. He got a spot based on their qualification quota category to swim that at Worlds because of his Olympic medal. So now those 2 that tied, only one of them gets to go. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide.
Flip a coin.
Yeah, exactly. Flip a coin.
Don't want to have a swim.
But they're all medal potential. That's probably their strongest event on the men's side right now.
Yeah,
so 3
absolutely,
of them.
Britt. It's a great event for them, and they love that 4x2 relay.
Oh, that relay.
You know what? And it was like when Canada had Alex Bauman or Canada had Summer, okay? And when you've got a stud, then the rest of the team feels that they can go out on a ledge and mm-hmm. really try for something mm-hmm. because you got money in the bank, mm-hmm. and it just brings you feel proud of what you've got, and you can brag about, hey, we got a 4x2 mm-hmm. relay that's the best in the world, and you know what, it helps the entire country rise, So. Yeah. But they do want a lot more medals than just that. And right now, I don't see a whole one punch on the horizon. Maybe the old sprint guy is doing pretty well too, Ben Proud. But,
Ben Proud does have his moments, and he'll like those stroke 50s being added. He can play around maybe with a couple
Actually,
under.
there's a free medal. I forgot. Yes, you're right. Yep, you're right.
There'll be ones. People were asking me if the Canadians are going to really benefit off of the addition of the 50s, and we'll have slight benefit, but there are going to be countries that have huge major benefit. So we'll dive into that in a second. My only other highlights I did want to mention: Angered Evans set a new British record and a world-leading time in the 100 breaststroke. We go like this. And then Freya Colbert went really fast in the 200 freestyle, 1:55, which topped Mary Sophie Harvey for second in the world this year. So that's something we will keep an eye on here in Canada because I always like to bring it back. Sadly, we don't have a ton of breaststrokers going near a 105 right now. But we do have a 200 freestyle that can go 155.
Mind you, the Aussies are going 153. So, you got to step it up if you want to hit the podium.
We're moving. Byron, the sport just goes on without us. I'm watching you and I'm thinking about myself. I'm like, at one point I had the Canadian record.
I don't think I've ever seen that race.
Really?
No, I've never seen the whole race.
Oh my goodness. Well, today's the day.
There you go.
You knew who was coming on and when, even without seeing it.
Well, because I know those guys. I raced them, right? I haven't lost those brain cells yet.
You've heard it once or twice. Okay, the topic I was most excited to talk to you about was the concept of taper. I get so many questions, whether it's from colleagues just genuinely curious or swim fans alike, of how you approach a taper. What is an athlete's regime in a taper? I say the word taper as if we all know what it means. So let's start out by saying, Byron, can you explain to us what taper even is?
Sure. It is the fine art of coaching is what a taper is. And basically the easiest way to describe it is take a spring, any kind of a spring, like a spring inside a pen or whatever. And what you do is you train an athlete, and you're basically training by pushing that spring down, pushing that spring down, pushing that spring down. And then when we taper, we reduce the amount of work, and it's basically the equivalent of taking the pressure off the spring, and up it goes. And there's lots of scientists that can explain all the physiological stuff that's happening in the muscles. Bottom line is the muscles just respond like, oh my God, I've got so much more energy now, and you've got more, and you can actually swim at a very high level. The difficulty is that if you go to too many meets and taper too often, then you're pushing the spring down, letting it go, pushing it down, letting it go, and you never get it down as far for that magic swim that Summer McIntosh had or whoever has. Or, and I've seen this once or twice, not often, all right? Americans had a superstar lady in the late 90s, and they didn't rest her for one competition for 18 months. They just bashed her and bashed her and bashed her. So then they pushed that spring down, and if you keep a spring down for too long, it's got no more spring. So they pulled it off and she went, right? And it was unfortunate. They ruined her. And so you've got to be careful that you don't overtrain somebody.
Yeah.
But bottom line is you train real hard at a high level, and obviously the coaches all have different ways of doing it. But then when you taper, then you reduce that stress and the body responds with fantastic response. Now the question becomes, how do you know when to taper? How long? That's the $1 million question. That's where the coach, I would argue, earns their money. You take a look at the meet and you back it up from there. What do I want to do 1 week out? What do I want to do 2? What do I want to do 3? You don't really think about what you're going to do 4 months out. That's just kind of general hard training. But then the last little bit, and you could have 2 women that are swimming the same event, you and Susie, and you may need a little bit less rest than Susie. And so a coach has got to know that. That's why I always tell anybody, if you're thinking of making a big change Olympic year and changing coaches, not a really good idea. No. The coach needs to get to learn you, and the athlete obviously needs to learn the coach and give them feedback and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it was a great explanation. Thank you. It just made me think about, I was listening to a Bob Bowman interview earlier, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he was talking about Hubie Koch, who's an Olympic champion. His first year in his program, he said, I will take all accountability. I did really mess up his taper, but it takes, he said, he's like, and this year we nailed it. Like it does take a little bit of time to figure things out.
Everybody's different.
And it, like you said, 2 athletes that swim the same event do things very differently. But the process of tapering, like you explained, is to give rest to the athlete so that they're allowed to reach maximum peak performance potential. Now, for a sprint event, that looks different than a distance race. How so?
Well, it's you need to be down to a hundredth of a second, or et cetera, right? And they're just basically, the sprint events take more muscle. So usually, historically, those guys are more, those women or men are stronger. They've been doing more weights, et cetera, et cetera. And for that reason, the muscles are bigger, stronger, whatever. Bigger muscles need more rest. It's as simple as that. And the distance swimmers that swim 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 15 minutes, they're doing a lot more training that's recovery based. Like, in other words, it's more, well, we call it aerobic training. And that means the muscles aren't quite as taxed at the same level. It's more working on your heart, et cetera. And therefore, you don't need nearly as much rest. And some of the best
Which is the most unfortunate thing in the world. Who let that happen?
When we're in the workout or something, and I'm, we're in the taper process, some more than others, and I'll say, okay, the sprinters here, you guys are doing this, and then you're going to be done. And the milers over here, we call them milers because that's the longest event other than the open water. And I say, okay, yeah, well, you guys are doing this, and then you're doing this, and then you're doing this. And they look and they go, well, that's unfair. And I said, blame your parents. All right, it's genetic. It is 100% genetic. You were born with what's called slow twitch fiber, which means you can't really go crazy, go fast. I could take an athlete and sprint the living bejesus out of him all year, and if they don't have the right genes, it's going to be a waste of my time and theirs.
So I shouldn't make a comeback for LA in the sprint 50s.
No, you will. You'll bomb, Britt. Right? Okay. So and it's very interesting because you can do all these tests, and there was a period in the 80s where people were doing muscle biopsies, pulling the muscles out and looking at the striations of the muscles to see what percentage was slow twitch, fast twitch fibers, and it kind of boiled down to, yeah, that's good, but you basically could almost do what's called a standing broad jump or a standing vertical jump, and see how high you can go. And those that can do the highest, like I think somebody said the world record of the best people in the world do like 40 or 42 inches, I believe. Wow. All right, and that's those are like volleyball players, Michael Jordan, basketball player, like those kind of people, high jumpers probably. But like we did it on our team this year, last year, and it's pretty amazing. Sprinters were here.
Wow.
Distance guys could go, they barely got their feet off the ground.
So is that basically their ticket? If you want to get in the sprint lane, you have to be able to jump a certain height and they'll let you in.
You got to jump high.
Okay, and how do we bring the shave down element into this? Because I was an athlete that I only shaved down when I was like fully tapered. Like I went to my high school prom with, I'll be honest, hairy legs all the way down.
In a long dress.
In a very long dress. But it was really important to me. It was a lot about the feeling. Yep. So tell me a bit about the process of shaving down. Do you have a specific outlook when it comes to an athlete's recommendation?
Yeah. So, for those that aren't aware, I think most people watching this are swimming people, so they would. But for those that aren't, it's a process of literally shaving all the hair off your body. And it started in, I'll give you a little history perspective.
Not in 1970.
Yeah. Well, no, we did. Well, not the hair, though. Everywhere else, all right, And it started in '56 at the Olympics in Australia. And John Conrad's the big Australian superstar. was very, you've known gentlemen that are very hairy, all right? And he was. And the father said, my God, that's slowing you down, son. All right, I work with boats, and we always go under the keel of the boat, and we scrape the barnacles and everything off. He said, I think you should shave that hair off you, and you'll go a lot faster. He went to the Olympic trials in Australia, hammered the world record, beat everybody. And then all of a sudden, the other Aussies went, whoa. Yeah. So they all did it. Well, the rest of the world didn't know about it. There was no internet back then. So they went to the Australian Olympics in '56, and they killed everybody. Wow. So then all of a sudden, everybody in the world said, hey, we're going to shave down. What ends up happening is, in my simple analysis, you expose all the nerve endings because you've now ripped off a layer of skin, obviously. So then when you dive in the water, you have, in essence, more nerves that are feeling more of the water. It feels like you're going faster through the water because you're feeling more of the water with your body, with all those nerve endings. So you feel like, the best example is a hot knife going through butter. It just feels like amazing when you hit the water. So you don't want to lose that feel by doing it every week. So you just save it for the very biggest meet of the year. Now there may be 3 meets a year, there may be 4 meets a year, but usually it's just 1 or 2. Okay. And you save it for those. Yeah.
That was how I did it. But then I went to the Olympics and I was asking some people, and some of the girls were like, no, we shave down like regularly. I'm like, what?
Well, I think
it's a personal preference.
Well, and there's a little societal implications there too.
Not everyone's going to prom with hair all over their legs, right. But you know who did? Brittany MacLean.
I know.
You know who did? Yeah. Okay, quickly on that.
And cyclists shave their legs all the time, male and female, because there's the whole different ballgame. It's not to go fast. It's because they know eventually one day they're wiping out. Yeah. And then if it was hair, then it was hard to get all the stones and grit and stuff out of their legs. So, there are reasons you do different things. So.
Okay. So before we close on this concept, we are going to go into kind of like breaking down what the meets are this summer on the calendar. Yep. But first, I want to quickly talk about, because you mentioned everything works differently for each athlete. Summer McIntosh, I want to ask about load management. In general, every athlete has to be pretty smart about how often they're swimming, how often they're competing, and at one meet itself. And I remember so vividly when I came up to you before the Olympics and I said, Byron, why is Summer not swimming the 800 freestyle? And you had riffed off like 45 reasons why she shouldn't. And your coaching brain immediately, like I always hear your analysis brain and I love your color commentary brain, but the coaching brain is something that I can never fully get because I've never been there. And you immediately were like, this is why. So tell me why she has to be incredibly smart about not too many events, but to do the events she does well.
Well, she was also young. And what I mean by that is, like the first Olympics she made kind of out of the blue when she was, 14. And therefore, she only had a couple of events. All right. So now this one, obviously, she's coming in as a big favorite to win. And part of it is don't get greedy. Let's go for the ones that are going to fit the program properly, have a little bit of recovery in there. She had a day off and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there's a little insight there that I know and some others know. She hates the 800 freestyle. So you're putting all this pressure on this young woman, and then you're going to put her in an event she really doesn't like. Even though she would have won the silver medal in heartbeat, she actually might have won the gold medal. She was that ready to go. But focus on the ones you've got. And I'll actually use another example, and that's Kaylee McEwen, the Australian, the one that we said earlier in this show that had a chance to beat Summer in the 200 IM and had a very bad race. She admitted afterwards she was a stress ball and was, she choked basically. The Australian did. But 3 years earlier in Tokyo, she could have swum the 200 IM, but the coaches felt that she wasn't mentally prepared and ready to do it and to take away from her backstroke. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to let's get the gold medals out of the way. Let's win some gold medals at the Olympic Games. And then 4 years later, as it turns out with COVID, 3 years later, we'll have that on our belt. We've got something in the bank. Now let's experiment a little. Now maybe we'll go for that fourth event. As it turned out, it didn't work at all. And so I think having Summer just go those 4 events was brilliant. Would have been a big mistake to try the 800 free. I just think it would have had
always sitting there.
Would have been
You're
like
thinking about what's still
out there.
Would
have been like a tumor.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Okay,
that's true.
right there. Now, but let's fast forward 4 years. Now we're in LA. Summer has said, I'm going to pick a 5th event. I'm going to go for another event. So she'll swim the same 4 events. Now I have to admit, now that they've added all the 50s, the event order might change. It's been the same event order for probably 10 or 20 years now. So normally I would have said, yes, it'll be the same event order, and the event that's going to work for her is either the 800 free or the 200 backstroke. So she'll swim one of those two. But now if they change things because of the addition of all those 50s, then we'll have to relook at it.
Yeah. Okay. Great stuff. Well, I love the insights and I appreciate it. I want to break through the season because I've gotten some early questions from our lovely viewers and audience about what does the swim season look like? I call, from now really until back to school is championship season, at least from, June onward. The first meet that I have on the docket is the Tier Pro Swim Series. It's the last Pro Swim Series in the States. It'll be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's coming up in just over a week. Tell me about a Pro Swim Series in general. Swim Series, a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah.
A Pro Swim Series, and how you'd prepare an athlete for something like that.
Well, the Americans were very smart because once people started swimming past university, like I said, originally people were retiring after they graduated from school, 21, 22, 23 years of age. Then all of a sudden they started funding athletes to swim 25, 26 years old, 27, but they had no meets because everything's based on the NCAA system in the United States. So all of a sudden, from September to April, there were no meets for these older swimmers. So they had to invent something, and they invented what you're referring to, the Tier Pro Series. And they used to have 4. This year, for whatever reason, they only have 3 of them. And they're all kind of after Christmas. And it's a meet. I have a rough rule of thumb, and other coaches may not share the same idea, but I feel you cannot swim well in a season until you've had your 3rd meet. All right? Maybe by your 3rd meet, you can actually start to get back to close to best times. And so if you didn't do any meets and you just showed up at a trials or something, you wouldn't swim very well. There's a whole different ballgame between training and between racing. It's just that extra little fine edge you must have, and you've got to learn to do that by racing. And so therefore, you need some higher quality meets. It can't be, the local Los Angeles Invitational or Nebraska Invitational. It's got to be where there's a lot of good people there. And so the Americans are funding this competition. A lot of their top people go. And
a lot of Canadians go.
And a lot of the Canadians, most of the national center athletes are going to go down there again because there aren't a lot of great meets up here either that have a critical number of elite racers. Like you had Finley Knox on the last show. He's not going to get a race in Canada, all right? He's much better than most of the athletes here in his better events anyway. So it's a great meet for that. And because the trials are in about 4 weeks after that, 5 weeks, whatever, it's going to be the last racing opportunity. So you've kind of got to put it on the line there. So you will do a mini taper. We just talked about taper. It won't be the full thing. You won't shave for it.
No.
But you will rest a little bit. So in other words, the meet starts, it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Actually, the distance is on Wednesday. So you'll take most programs take Sunday off, and then they'll kind of go easy Monday, Tuesday. Because they'll actually fly down on Tuesday. Yeah. So that's a day lost anyway. And then Wednesday, and then you see what you can do. Yeah. And it'll stimulate you, and it'll give the coaches an idea. Are we a little ahead of where we usually are? Are we a little behind where we usually are? Yeah. So
I think that's the best way to put it. It's a good preparation meet, but it's also really just like you can use. I worked a lot on like race strategies of like how do I want to build into this race. The time might not have been where I was when I was fully tapered, but we tried something different or tried something we might want to implement at a trials or world championships. Right after that, a couple weeks after, is Mel Zajac in Vancouver, which typically also attracts a good chunk of the West Coast national teamers and sometimes their East Coasters. Around the same time, Mare Nostrum Tour as well. So those pretty similar, I would guess. Maybe a little less of a drop
taper.
taper.
They're more geographical. They only track too many from disparate places. The Mare Nostrum in Europe attracts most of the Europeans, but let's face it, they're all 2-hour flight away, right? Okay. I mean, when Ben Titley first came over to become our national center coach here from England, and I said the nationals were in Victoria, and he said, so what, we fly in the day before? It takes an hour?
Yeah.
I said, Ben, this is a big country.
Yeah.
All right, you're from England, you can get anywhere in an hour or two.
Yeah.
That's
Not
7
here.
hours to get out to Victoria. He says, oh my God, right? And so, anyway, in Europe, they can get down to that meet pretty easily. And Vancouver, people will be out there. Yeah. It's the last meet, but it won't be as important as this Tier Pro Series meet.
Yeah, I agree. We'll expect some faster times the Tier Pro Swim Series because there's still enough time before trials.
Yeah, that's right.
This one's getting a little close. Speaking of, World Trials are happening June 7th through 12th here in Canada. How do you feel about the change? We typically see a nationals come late March, early April. We then saw Olympic trials happen more into May. It was the third week. It was the day after my wedding. When was that? Second week of May. But now we have a June trials. How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, the May trials was a one-off, and what I mean by that is it was all because of COVID and everything like that. It was all because of problems, all right, in the schedule that we had to move stuff. So, no, it was because of the Worlds, all right, the separate Worlds that was put in at the last minute as a makeup because of COVID. So normally we had an April trials for 20, 30 years, and most of the entire world does that, as you know, Britt. And the reasoning is that then you've got 10 to 12 weeks before the Olympic Games, and that's really enough time to go into a full workload, beat the athletes up, get them down into a trough, and then bring them back out in a nice taper and racing. The only country in the entire world that has trials really close to the Olympic Games was the United States. And then the Aussies had a disastrous 2012 and a disastrous 2016 Olympics. And they said, you know what? What we're doing isn't working. We're going to move the trials to June. Theirs is an entirely different reason than the United States, though. And so now Canada's actually hired one of the very top, very good exercise physiologist from Australia. And his first recommendation to us was move your trials to June from April. So we're going to try it, this quadrennial. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so with this new trials coming in the middle of June, we then go, our next major competition is World Championships happening at the end of July, where the athletes that qualify at this trials will then go to compete against the best in the world. That is your full taper, full shave. That is the focus competition for the entire summer.
Yep.
So I don't think we need to harp on that much too longer. We get it. We're clear on that one. And then there's a new event in Canada, which is a short course nationals that's going to be happening right after. Kind of a fun little addition. We'll see if it picks up at all. Then we go into there's the World Juniors in Romania that will be happening. And I think that one's going to be a really fun development. Keep an eye on I know you and I will watch with intent of like, who's going to be our future that we're chatting about. But those are the future, hopefully, Summer McIntosh of the world that, in a little bit, because we've talked a lot here about, it's so great to see her success and she is still so young, but it kind of, it distracts us a little bit from like, because we were talking about Summer when she was 12, right? 11 or 12. So we have yet to kind of meet the next star. Is that not kind of true?
Well, it is. And I mean, obviously she's going to take a lot of the limelight, right? I mean, when, she's rocketed to the top right off the bat. I mean, we talked a lot about Penny. I mean, again, she was a young superstar, and that whole crew actually, Penny and Taylor Ruck and Rebecca Smith. I mean, that group of women that were born in the year 2000 was a stunning, talented group of athletes that we had on the team. So Summers is obviously the next one. So now you're right. The World Juniors is where you're going to find the future. I mean, you're going to find future stars, and this is probably a more important one than the one that's right before the Olympics, because they need 2 or 3 years to be players, possibly at the Olympic level. And so this is a very, very important one. The only caveat is that somebody who's, like Summer never went to a junior world championships because she was too good too fast. And we have a young boy that's moving up pretty quickly, Oliver Dawson, the breaststroker from out west. And he's right now the best senior breaststroker, even though he's only 17. So he probably won't go to World Juniors. He'll probably go to the Worlds. And
or if it is like it used to be, I once went 1 year to both. So maybe a couple, because the senior is first, so there's a chance to maybe try. And I think
the whole thing, and then
developmentally, it was awesome for me to, you go from one where you're maybe a relay swimmer, or you make a semifinal out of a whim, or you go to one where you're winning medals and you're learning what it's like to stand atop the podium and reach against.
I agree 100%. You got to learn to win somewhere.
I agree.
And so to send him to that would be great. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what his coach's plan is. But
well, we'll see after trials too. Trials will be a fun one. I do quickly want to shout out the Para World Championships are happening in Singapore as well. Those will be end of September. So for them, that's their full shave and taper focus competition of the summer. The Paralympic athletes will be at the same trials competing.
Cool.
So
I'm recruiting one of the top para athletes to come to U of T. We'll see.
There you go. And last but not least, we do have a World Cup circuit in the fall, which I wanted to mention because Toronto is host of the last stop. So the first stop is in Carmel, Indiana, then Westmont, Illinois, and then Toronto, Ontario, October 23rd to 25. I sound like I'm like, buy your tickets now. I don't have any tickets, but I do always like to shout out when there's home events. So that'll be a really good chance to see the best in the world come to Toronto. And those World Cups were really kind of a big, for me, it sounded like, I never competed in them, which this sounds bad, but it was a big financial.
But it's a financial advantage for the very best, obviously, like Summer and Kylie Moss and that. They can win some prize money. And there's not a lot of money, arguably, in the sport of swimming compared to other sports. So it's a nice opportunity for the elite athletes. And the World Cup has been up and down, okay? So sometimes it wasn't around and didn't fit into your schedule. So it wasn't like you just didn't go because you didn't want to go. It didn't fit nicely, or it was in the middle of a university season or whatever, right?
Yeah, it was always the fall.
Sometimes it's way over in the Orient, and it's, it may cost $10,000 to actually make the trips over there. So even if you make 10 grand, you haven't gained anything.
Right. And in the events that I did, I was like, there was 1-800 free. It was really, at my day, it was really focused on the sprinters.
And it still really is.
I mean, unless you're Katika Hosuga.
But you know what? I mean, it'll TPAS, Toronto Pan Am Aquatic or Sports Center is a great venue. I mean, they'll get it all dudded up and ready to go. It's worth going out to see because again, it won't have all the best swimmers in the world, but it'll have a
lot of them, and especially the North American unit because they'll try to probably do all three. Great stuff. My last question to you is on the state of swimming in Canada.
Okay.
What excites you most about what we're currently seeing in swimming in this country?
Well, the part that excites me most is what excites everybody. All right, Summer McIntosh. I mean, to me, that's the most exciting thing that's happening right now. When you walk into a competition and you pretty well got a slam dunk success happening, then everybody else can kind of build off of that and get behind that. You know, it's almost like I don't know, like a snowplow or something. She's plowing the way, and we're just coming right behind, and then we can take part of it as well. And obviously, it's very great to see a couple of men doing an amazing job right now as well. So I just think it's very exciting to be looked upon as one of the top countries in the world. Obviously, the Americans and the Aussies are way out there, and maybe even the Chinese team. But there was a long time where we were really happy to win one medal at Olympic Games, and that's not the case anymore. And I think you'll probably remember it was in Rio. When the statement was made on the last day that the new norm is medals, for Canada at the Olympic Games. Well, that's a nice norm to say.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited about that. The only thing we've got to pick up is we've got to pick up a little bit of the senior program domestically in the country, because a lot of the athletes now are away, and it might depress the improvement and the excitement of everybody at home and getting them up to another level. Yeah. That's the only thing I think that we're missing right now is that we've had a mass exodus of people, and that didn't used to be the case, and so we've somehow got to pick that up. I'm not sure how that's going to have to be done. That'll be time for another segment.
I was going to say, if anyone at home has any tips and tricks for how we keep them, that'll be great.
Yes, that's right.
We're going to close with our fun segment, which is called No Cap.
Okay.
And that is where I will pull a question out of a cap, and I'm just asking my guests to give me their honest thoughts during No Cap. I made these specifically for you.
Okay, good.
So some of them are going to be submitted by fans. If you're at home and want to submit for No Cap, please let me know. But my question... Oh, okay. Byron, what advice would you give to a junior swimmer right now?
Well, junior kind of depends. Junior is a very big category. You could be 12 and be considered a junior swimmer. So the goals for a 12-year-old are way better than a
This actually was inputted by the very Kylie Moss. So she wants to know what Byron's advice is for young swimmers. Let's call it 12. Let's say 12.
I mean, there's a big difference between the younger end of that spectrum and the older end of that spectrum, right? I think, and you know what, I'm gonna give you little exceptions as well. It's a big difference between a female and a male, all right? And what I mean by that is males at 12 just have fun and just be in the sport for fun, because it really doesn't matter how good you are at 12. It doesn't translate when you're older, because there's so many body changes and physical changes that happen in guys once they hit puberty and get testosterone in their body. They grow, they get bigger, they get stronger. So, succeeding as a youngster, as a guy, doesn't necessarily translate. So you just have fun. I mean, literally, have fun, enjoy it, do the things that get you excited about the sport. And hopefully the coaches will surround them with that as well, all right? And for the young ladies, the key is the same. It still has to be fun. You've got to get into it. But you can actually start making inroads. Not maybe like Summer McIntosh, where she wins a medal at nationals at 12, but you can start making moves, because by 16, 17, women can be world beaters. So if the coach and everybody identifies a 12-year-old with a bit of talent, then there's going to have to be a little bit more work go into it, probably. But you got to enjoy it, because if you're that good at 12, you're probably going to be that good at 22. So you're looking at 10 more years of this. So you know what? Don't be barely doing things. Have some fun, have some friends, do some things to stay involved and enjoy the sport. And hopefully the coach will be able to surround themselves with excitement and something different, and not just, training up and down the pool all the time.
And then hopefully long time from now, you'll be sitting in chairs like us talking about the sport you love more than anything because of that initial fun. Well, Byron, I'm so grateful for your time. You have a practice to get to.
Yes, I do.
We've got athletes of tomorrow that need to be taught, but I could talk to you forever. We appreciate your time as always.
Good.
If you are listening at home, make sure you are doing your liking, commenting, letting us know who you want to hear from, and of course, submitting questions for No Cap. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.